something and how you're going to do it. Then comes the content and campaign. So once you have an idea of what you want to do and why you want to do it and how you want to do it, the question is what kind of content will get you there? Will it be an infographic? Will it be a thought leadership article, or will it be like a industry story? What kind of content or what kind of a campaign will it be that will help you get there? The next step after you have your content or campaign in place is to analyze the right people to talk to. So let's say you have a great content in hand, but it means nothing if you're not reaching out to the right people with that particular piece of content, right? So the next step is to be able to correctly analyze the right people you need to be in touch with. After that comes the launching of the campaign, ensuring that the people that you have selected to reach out to are actually getting the information you're sharing, it's in front of them, and they're actually kind of absorbing that information that you're sharing. And the last step is to evaluate how a campaign performs, and which goes beyond just looking at how many coverages you got, which is kind of the traditional norm when it comes to PR. The only metric has been how much coverage do you get. But with Wizikey, we've been able to give certain insights, certain data points, other than just the coverage, which helps people in understanding if the campaign actually did succeed or it did not in different kind of areas. Right? So I'll quickly jump into how Wizikey helps you in doing each and every one of these things. So I'll start with strategy. So when you're coming up with a strategy for your business, it's extremely important that you're not only looking inwards as to what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. It's important that you have an overview of the entire industry or in the number of players around you in terms of what are they doing for their media presence, their media activity, how are they building their brand in this particular industry, and is it something that you can learn from or take some inference out of and use in building your own visibility strategy or in building your own brand, right? So to do that, I head over to insights. This is a part of Wizikey which helps you in understanding how your industry is positioned as of today, how are you positioned vis-a-vis a few of your competitors as of today, and what kind of visibility does each of these competitors or players have. So for example, if we look at the social commerce industry, which is kind of like a booming industry in India, I can see right off the bat here that Meesho is doing head and shoulders above everyone else, right? And if I'm someone like a, let's say, Glow Road or a W Mall, and I want to understand, okay, what is the market leader doing that is working so well? I can simply click on that part of the chart and I can have a look at all the articles in the last 6 months, or I can play around with the timeline, but for now we're looking at 6 months. I can see all the articles which have mentioned Meesho to get an understanding of, okay, what kind of narrative are they driving? What kind of keywords do they use? Are they playing on certain themes, or are they present in a lot of, let's say, industry stories, or do they do a lot of data reports? What is it basically that they do that has worked so well for them over the last 6 months? And is it something that I can learn from, seeing that people writing on this industry are clearly interested in what Meesho has to share, right? And of course, none of these brands being mentioned in maybe a blog post or blogspot page or something like that, that won't add to the brand's value or to the brand's recall per se, right? So to keep that in mind, we take the top 250 to 300 publications in the country, and we see how these brands are performing within that subset of publications, so as to ensure that the data you see here, it doesn't include any kind of vanity metrics, and it's actual actionable information that you see here, which you can take direct actions off of, right?
Sure.
Again,
Dhruv, allow me just
sure.
hang in one here. See, there are two parts which are very, very interesting here when you are looking into insights, right? The first part is what do you want to measure, right? So what we think the best for a business to keep a track, whether you are in a early stage, whether you are a unicorn, whether you're a large enterprise, is to keep an eye on two parameters. One is your brand itself, how your brand is doing. Let's say how Dell, Lenovo, how Apple is being mentioned. But at the same time, please remember brands are also a great personification of a leadership team, right? It's very important how the leaders are perceived in the industry, right? Which is where we have set up two simple matrices. One is the brand, how is my brand doing? And the second is how my leadership team is doing. How is my founder visible? How is my CEO visible as compared to the CEO of the other companies, right? The second question which people keep asking us pretty regular is, especially startups, which are creating a new industry. Let's say if you're a milk tech business, right? I don't know what is milk tech industry. I think 5 years before probably did not exist, right? But let's say if you're in milk tech and you are one of those big basket or country delight or big basket kind of a milk basket kind of businesses, right? Who do you measure yourself against, right? Now that's something which I always answer. There are three questions that you should ask yourself, right? So first is your direct competition. Thanks to the venture capital industry, they ensure there's enough competition for you. Maybe your direct competition would be, if people do not buy the milk from me, which startup would they buy from me, right? So maybe a direct competition of Country Delight in that sense could be other such milk tech companies, right? The second could be indirect competition. See, the aggregators, like a big basket, also could be competition because they also keep launching their own brands of milk, right? And the third is your aspirational, right? So, for example, even Amul, for example, while Country Delight has become very big today, they may having a direct competition with Amul, but let's say 2 years back, maybe Amul would have been a very aspirational competition for them, right? Let's say if you still don't have any competition, but you may have certain keywords that you want to measure. So, for example, I'll tell you Wizikey, right? Wizikey would like to be present in those articles, those journalists who are writing on SaaS, right, which is software as service. You can set up the same landscape using those keywords. You can remove all the brand name and competition, but you can just, and Dhruv, could you just quickly hover across there,
Sure.
right? So you can quickly set up your insights basis those keywords which matter to you. And there's a three dot button which is right. So you can go to update landscape and you can just change your keywords right here. And this will give you that. So it's very important that you measure what really is something which is expected. And I think if you're part of the enterprise account at Wizikey, you can set up more than 5, 6, 7 landscapes, right? As per your investor attention, as per your founder's attention. If you're a young, early stage startup who has taken a starter or a professional package, even then you can set up at least 2 to 3 landscapes in your. So I think if you're starting a PR, it's extremely critical that you really measure what you really, really want to chase, right? And that's why this helps a lot of businesses. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, like Anshul mentioned, it's very important that you track and measure whatever is happening all the time for you and your competitors. So to that end, what you can also do is, if I scroll down, I have a similar analysis, but kind of like a week by week breakup, which helps me in understanding, okay, who out of this lot is the most consistent, who peaked in terms of their visibility, who didn't peak, and why was it exactly that they peaked. So for example, if we look at this chart, I can see that this moment stands out as and just stands out like a sore thumb because SimSim rose over Misho even in this particular week. And if
Yes.
I want to understand what happened, I can simply click here and I can look at all the mentions that Misho had, which were 14, and what SimSim had, which was 17. Again, which helps me in understanding, okay, what actually happened in this particular week, right? Which helps SimSim rise above Misho. And is it something that I can use, or is it something that the industry or the journalist would be still interested in hearing? And I can use that in kind of drafting my campaign and content, right? So that's the EMA bit of Wizikey. EMA stands for Earned Media Authority, which is our metric that we've coined to be able to measure how each brand is actionably visible in their industry, right? So the next tool, which is part of Insights, is called Newsfeed, which is a little geared towards the execution side of things, wherein it helps you to say it helps you in basically prioritizing where your brand needs to be visible as of today and what can kind of take a backseat. So, like I mentioned, your business objectives play a big role in how you approach your PR, right? And if my business objective, let's say today, is to raise funds, I would want to, on a PR end, be visible in a particular set of publications more so than the others, like maybe Economic Times and Financial Express, for example, right? So with newsfeed, what I can do is I can select those few publications that I want to focus on as of today and see how each of these brands are positioned in that subset, right? And let's say if I am Misho, looking at this, I get an idea, okay, so I'm pretty well positioned when it comes to these mainline publications. I'm head and shoulders above everyone else. And maybe I should focus my resources and my energy in getting more coverage in maybe digital first publications like Ink 42, Your Story, or stuff like that, right? So that's how newsfeed helps in deciding what needs to be taken up as P1 in as of today in terms of where you need to be visible and what can kind of take a backseat. So let's, like I said,
Actually,
for me, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
So, for example, let's say if I have already raised Series B and I want to raise Series C, right? So this is something which I was trying to solve yesterday for a customer, right? Now, when you are in that position, you really want to be very clear what do investors read. Probably investors read Your Story, probably investors read Economic Times, probably investors read some of the larger main lines which are around business, right? Now, this media planning tool helps in a manner you can configure some of these keywords very well, right? So, for example, you can choose publications like Economic Times, and you can see how is your industry being mentioned, right? Now, in this case, obviously, Misho is like a giant lion's share. But if you're part of an industry which does not have a clear number one, number two player, then I think you can focus extremely well by this tool in terms of the 5 or 6 publications you really want to cover if you want to be in the attention of the investors, actually, right? So consider this like a media planning tool, which will give you far much more insights and far much more precision in terms of getting yourself in the right visibility, actually. Yeah. So let's say this once you are clear with these two things, MR measurement and newsfeed analysis, then I think you should be heading over to the reach out to the journalist part, actually, right? And this is, I would say, number one reason why everybody loves Wizikey. You don't have to worry about keeping track of any journalists. You don't have to maintain any databases. You don't have to maintain any Excel sheets. Those things are now passe, right? And I let Dhruv quickly show you this by a simple keyword. And I love to kind of make this complicated. So once he has done his simple keyword, I'll make things difficult for him.
Definitely. So yeah. So basically what you can do is you can search for a certain keyword like I did for social commerce, and I get a list of journalists who have written on social commerce, let's say in the last 1, 3, 6, 9 months. I'll go for 6 months right now. And I have a list of 44 journalists who have mentioned the keyword social commerce, which right off the bat gives me an idea, okay, these journalists will definitely be interested in what I have to share, which is kind of a deviation from how traditionally things are done, which is you select a plethora of journalists and you reach out to all of them and hope that someone or the other, by pure luck, might find what you say interesting and might take it forward, right? So what we're building is we're building a more different approach, a more targeted approach, which weighs heavily on relevance, that you're talking to people that actually matter, and that exponentially increases your chances of being able to build relationships with these people and also build visibility for your brand as a byproduct from that. So if I want to understand, okay, what is Aditi actually writing on in relation to social commerce, I can click on that part and I can look at all the articles where she has mentioned social commerce. I can also look at her complete profile, which will include all her recent articles, which again gives me an insight into the mind of the journalist, into what the journalist likes to write, how they like to write it. Is it a good match for my brand or not? Basically, I can also look at her LinkedIn profile, all of which goes towards helping me in building a media list, which is ideal and a perfect fit for my brand, and which I know will be beneficial for my brand to be reaching out to, right? And in addition to this, what you can do is you can also search, or you can also use additional filters. So for example, if I want to see, okay, who in Delhi is writing on social commerce, and mind you, there might, okay, so we do have 15 people. I was about to say there might not be anyone, but we see 15 people who write on keyword, sorry, social commerce from Delhi. I can also say, okay, I want to see who writes on this keyword from Delhi for TechCrunch, maybe. Okay. Let's say TechCrunch, right?
Bro,
I
let me make
apply
your
that.
life a little difficult actually, okay? So this is
All right,
easy.
sure.
I want to know how many journalists are writing on Modi ji and blockchain. Is that possible?
Definitely possible. So I'll just show how that is done as well. So again, what you can do is you can play around with these keywords. You can kind of relate keywords in the sense, okay, like Anshul mentioned. Okay, let's see who's writing on Modi and blockchain. Was it Anshul?
Yeah, let's see whether you get any result or
Okay.
not.
So what you can do is you can simply add a AND feature or an AND function, and you have
Nice.
these 13 journalists who have mentioned Modi and blockchain in the
What
same
about
article.
gaming, Dhruv? Gaming is super
Sure,
hot right now, right?
definitely. So we've
Are
got
there
this
journalists
Modi
writing
and
on
gaming.
Modi ji and gaming?
Oh, that will be an interesting thing to see. All right, let's see gaming. Oh, actually, there are 21
Not
people
bad. 21
who have written
journalists.
on Modi and gaming, right? So this is how you can use the feature to find the exact match in journalists for your brand and in what your story wants to convey. And you can select these journalists. So let's say if I'm a gaming company, I am talking something about what Modi ji has announced. I can select these 21 journalists right off the bat, and I can reach out to them with a campaign from the platform itself. You know, I don't have to bounce between my product, my email, and a number of different things, all of which is amalgamated and given to the users in one well flowed and well designed package, right? So let's say I want to send a campaign. I click on send new campaign. I put down a heading. So
Actually, hang a minute. Hang a minute.
sure.
So I think, especially when you're doing these campaigns, right? What I've figured out, there's a magic number when you get maximum responses from journalists. Actually, right? While I think what we are showing you here are specific journalists who are writing on Modi and gaming, right? In terms of the last 1 year, what we have observed, pitches which had, let's say, 250 plus journalists, right? They were getting far much more responses and far much more coverage also, right? So, Dhruv, let's say if I'm a gaming company and if I want to announce my own, I would say, a new game that I have started recently because of COVID, right? How would I go about selecting journalists for that particular use case?
Definitely. So what you can do is either you can tweak the keywords to say COVID and gaming, for example, because gaming is definitely hot during COVID times, and I will get a list of journalists in that sense as well. So while it loads, what you can also do is you can search for certain interests. Like you can search
Sure.
for journalists writing on tech or writing on
So
startups.
there are
For
167 journalists who are writing on COVID and gaming right now. This is last
so
1 month, two
definitely,
month.
this is the last 6 months
Not
actually. So,
bad.
but it kind of boils down to the last 3 months because no one was talking about COVID before that.
Okay.
So yeah, so in the last 3 months, basically, we can say that almost 170 people have been talking about COVID.
This is awesome.
Sorry, about gaming and COVID, right? So you can simply select all of them. My internet is just a little laggy here. We'll have
You
to
can
give it
switch
a
off your
second.
video,
And yeah,
Dhruv. That's fine.
all right, yeah, I think that should help. Great. So yeah, so I can select all of them. I can kind of review, go to each page, see the journalists that I have, and select all of them. And then I can rest assured send them a
You were talking
campaign.
about interest also, Dhruv?
Definitely. So interests is kind of like an equivalent to the beat that journalist likes to write upon, like what the journalist usually covers, what is his interest. So for example, I would definitely want to talk to people who are in technology when I'm sending them out something during about gaming. Or if I'm like, let's say a young company just started up, I can definitely also talk to journalists who are writing on startups, right? And I can also go through this list of different interests that we have and kind of find whatever I might think resonates with my brand. So let's say entertainment is also something that might be a good match for my brand, and I can also add that as well, right? And once I'm happy with the selection of interests that I have, I can simply apply that filter as well. And in addition to the already selected from the from the keyword search, I can also select these ones. So you see a lot of them are showing up again between my keyword search as well as in the interest search. So I can kind of go ahead and skip these people that I've already selected. So
Sure.
1 second, I'll take a second here because we have a question from Parul. So I'll just read out the question. Can we also look for news or topics journalists have covered? Great. So if I understood the question correct, if you want to search for certain keywords in terms of the news that you want to see, like what are the journalists. So I'm sorry, I didn't actually get what you were trying to say. Were you wanting to see the journalist names, or what was it that you were trying to
I
ask?
think what she's trying to understand, Dhruv, is let's say if she wants to know on a particular topic, what is the news being done actually. So that's something which you do in insights.
Okay, got it. Definitely, got it. So yeah, so like Anshan mentioned, if you want to see a particular topic and how the news around it is shaping up, you can use the insights tool to set up a landscape. Landscape is basically the analysis that we showed you, and use those keywords. So for example, if I want to see what is the news surrounding the gaming industry, or what is the news being created in the gaming industry, I can use the keywords around that, like gaming or PUBG, or some other kind of games that are hot right now, and I can get a analysis or all the news that is being generated with those keywords in mind. Right. So was I able to answer your question? Okay. So now we got another question.
Want to
What
look into
is
the
it?
news done by the journalist, which we have filtered here. Okay.
Okay, correct. So what you can do is, if I want to see what Monit Khanna has written on in terms of the filters I've used,
I
I
think
can be
Dhruv,
here and I can look at the 10.
Bro, hang on. So, Parul, I think what
Yeah.
you're trying to understand, can we just quickly see, let's say if you're searching for a particular keyword, like we have done, let's say Modi and gaming, is there a way that we can see news? No, I think, Parul, that's something which we are working on. You cannot see that as of right now. If you want to see a particular news done by a journalist, you can do that, right? But I think that's something which we are working on, Parul. So give us probably a 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll be launching another update, which you can then see a particular stream of news being done on a particular keyword or a hashtag, which will be launching very soon. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So, yeah. So like I was saying, I can use these different filters. I can select a list of journalists that I want to be talking to, and I can go ahead and send them a campaign. Right. So I'll go here. I'll put down a headline, which is kind of like a placeholder for right now. So I'll just put down this, and this is where basically the headline that you would want to share with journalists. That this is what you would put down in this particular box. And once you submit this, this will take you to a page wherein you can draft your campaign, draft your pitch that you would want to send out to the journalists. So again, if you can just give this 1 second, I'm sure it will start up. So okay, so basically, while this loads, I'll take this time to talk about another feature that we have that will show you once this loads is templates, right? So often, users come back to us and say, okay, hey, this is all well and good. Like, I get the journalists that I want to be talking to, but I don't know what content I should be sharing with them, or what kind of a story do journalists like, what kind of flow do they like it in, what kind of format do they like it in. And that's a major problem for a lot of users, right? So for that, we introduced templates, right? So for example, you can see here we have a few templates, and you can select any one of these templates that are in line with your story or what you want to share, and you get a template of that particular use case drafted in the exact kind of format that journalists like to read it in, the exact flow that the journalists like to read it in. It's crisp, it's long, depending on what the use case is, and you have something that is ready to go with minimal effort, wherein you just have to kind of plug in the information in the placeholders, and you have a pitch that is ready to go, right? So again, I can simply put in the company's name here, my name, let's say my company is PUBG, for example, and I can go ahead and add that information, and I have something that is well and good, right, the way the journalists like to have it, in a much quicker turnaround time, right? So what you can also do in addition to using these templates is, okay, there are certain collaterals that usually go out with a pitch. Like maybe you would send out a boilerplate or a picture of your team or a picture of the founder or a logo, right? These are kind of collaterals which are definitely a part of a pitch whenever it goes out, right? And if I have a big team of PR people helping me out with each of these pitches, it might get difficult to kind of track down, okay, someone has their the team picture on their laptop, someone has the founder picture on their system, someone has the boilerplate, etc., etc. So kind of to do away with that problem, what we introduced was something called brand box. So if I go over to brand box, this is kind of a one-stop place for your team to store brand collaterals, which are usually sent out with pitches. So you can store your logos, you can store your photos, which will include maybe the founders' photos, the team photos, and you can also include the boilerplates. And time to time, the platform will also nudge you to say, hey, have you updated your brand box? Have you updated the boilerplate? Have you added new photos? Or is your logo the same? So it gives you those kind of nudges to ensure that you have the freshest or the most up-to-date brand collaterals here that you want to share with the media, right? So I'll just show you how is it that you can go ahead and attach these things from the brand box. So let's say this was my pitch. I can simply go to add attachments. I can select my picture or my, I can select my picture or my logo, and I can simply attach them, and you have that ready to go out with the pitch itself, right? So let's say I've used my template, I've put down the plugins, I've attached my brand collaterals. The next step would be to review the selection of journalists that you have done. So review the journalists that you've selected, and maybe if you want to, select more journalists as well. So I can take the time here to maybe select more journalists that I want to reach out to. So I'll kind of, in interest of time, skip that step here, but you can definitely do that on this part of the page. This is basically a warning that tells you, okay, you shouldn't be reaching out to the maximum of 3 journalists per publication because of 2 main reasons. One of them being it kind of leads to confusion amongst the journalists, wherein you might lose out on any kind of visibility because the 17 journalists in Economic Times weren't able to, between themselves, figure out who will actually cover the story, and you miss out on visible coverage in any form, right? And the second is that it kind of gets spammy for the journalists, wherein you're sending the same story to a number of journalists, and that is something that they don't usually like. So this is a page wherein you can review the selection. Let's say if I want to further refine my selection in Economic Times, this is where I can do that by looking at their complete profile and what they've usually been doing. That gives me an insight into how they would be receptive to what I have to say. And I can narrow this down to the top 3 or 4 maximum journalists per publication. And again, I'll skip this step, but this is where I can kind of just, deselect the journalists I don't want to and refine my search and go ahead with that. So if I again, after this, go to the next step, this is the final review page wherein you can go through your pitch one last time, make sure everything is in place, and then you can submit it for review. So once you submit it for review, it comes back to us at Wizikey on the back end, wherein our PR experts and our AI goes through each and every pitch that is submitted to make sure it is not spammy, it is not advertorial, it's editorial material. We give it a fact check, a spell check, or grammar check to make sure everything is the best it can be before it goes out to the journalists for the business. So it ensures information is credible, it's actionable information, you are not spamming the journalist. And for the journalist, it ensures that they know whenever they're getting something from Wizikey, it will be information that they can use on an editorial front, and it won't be something that is advertorial that is just weighing them down or spamming them. So yeah, which leads me to the next point, wherein Wizikey has existed for just over a year now, and we've been able to build a rapport with journalists because of 2 main reasons. One of them, like I mentioned, is that they're sure to be getting credible, actionable information from the platform. And second is that they're sure to be in touch with the source or with the business directly without having to go through any intermediary or any kind of intermediation. Because usually once you add an intermediation, right, no one understands the business the way you do. Your business is best understood by you, of course. And you're the best person to be able to tell that story in a way that is not confusing, that is not leading on, that is not understandable for the journalist, right? So you're the best person to be able to do that, and journalists definitely love to be in directly talks with the businesses, and that is what we're trying to enable through the platform. That businesses should be able to build their own relationships with journalists and keep building on them as they grow as well, right? So let's say I'm happy with my how my pitch looks. I can go ahead and submit it for review. Our team will go over it as soon as possible, maybe in a minute of in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. And if we have any kind of suggestions, we give those to the user. Hey, you can tweak your headline, or hey, you can tweak the body. And if everything is simply awesome, everything is great, we send it out to the journalists, and you get a notification saying, hey, your campaign is live, right? So yeah, so let's say your campaign goes out, you've launched your campaign, so to speak, in terms of scale. The next step is to be able to evaluate how your campaign is performing, right? So for that, I'll come to the campaign section, wherein we've kind of, you can draw parallel to how Google AdWords work, wherein you run a campaign of Google AdWords, and it gives back to you certain insights, certain data points, like, hey, this was the demographic that interacted with your ad the most, or this was the time your ad was interacted with the most. And you use those points of data to optimize the next campaign you run that much better. You may run it at a different time, you may target a different demographic, etc., etc. So similarly, if I can see off the bat that I've run 5 total campaigns in which I've reached out to 123 people, and I've engaged 11 of them. Right? If I want to go at a micro level, I can open one of these campaigns. I can see on an individual level how many people I reached out to in this particular campaign, how many of them engaged with my pitch. I can also see all the replies that I've gotten on the platform itself, so they don't get lost in your inbox or in the clutter. You see all the relevant replies to your campaign on the platform in a neat view, wherein you can also go ahead and reply to them from the platform itself. And how this helps is, so since Wizikey is a completely collaborative use-based platform, you can have as many team members as you want working with you. We don't charge by the seat. So how this helps is, if let's say you are not available and some journalist has replied, your team members can quickly jump on the platform and shoot a reply out for the company or for your from your side. So you don't miss out on opportunities or anything like that. And everything is ensured to be flowing smoothly, right? So let's say, like I said, I can send out a reply. I can also see the campaign that was sent out, of course. And another thing, that when journalists get the campaign right in their inbox, they get 2 options. They get a simple 2-button option saying interested and not interested, right? So in this, what you can do is, let's say, how this helps businesses is, you can see, okay, who's interested in what I had to say and who's not interested. And this helps me in being able to select my media list in a much better manner. So if these 2 journalists said they weren't interested, I would be sure to not include them in the next campaign that I do. And on the flip side, if someone was interested in what I had to say, you can see they're voluntarily saying, hey, I like what you're sharing, I would like to get more information. And you can definitely ensure more campaigns, outreaches to these journalists, to be able to build a relationship with these journalists and kind of nurture that to get visibility for your brand. And for journalists also, since we're kind of trying to solve problems on both ends, right, from the businesses end and the journalists end, the journalist can rest assured saying, if I get a pitch and it is not right up my alley, or it's not something that I usually cover, I can simply say I'm not interested. And the particular business knows that this is not the journalist for my brand, and I'll be sure not to get any more pitches along those lines anymore from Wizikey. So that's how they can use this feature to streamline the kind of pitches they receive from the platform and avoid anything that might not be of interest or might not be something that they like to cover, right? So again, I'll take a second here because we have another question from Satvik. So I'll read out his question. It's, what about if I have my own personal journalist contacts and want to send them the pitch as well? Can I add them on the platform as well? Great. So what we've seen usually happen is, when we reach out to journalists, right, and they kind of always love how Wizikey works, and they usually reach out to us saying, hey, kind of please onboard my friends or please onboard my colleagues. They too would love to get more pitches and they too would love to get information from Wizikey. And that's what they can use to do that as well. But if, let's say, you have certain contacts yourself personally that you want to reach out to that you can't find on the platform, you can go to the My Contact space, wherein you can store certain contacts that you also want to include in the campaigns that you send out. And you can attach, or you can select these from this part when you're doing a campaign and include them as well in the campaign that goes out. So I hope, Satvik, that answers your question, right? If not, you can definitely kind of just drop a follow-up question and I'd be happy to take that. So yeah, so moving forward, like I mentioned, the interested, non-interested part, there's another nifty feature, another feature that helps you in measuring how a campaign has performed is the way you can look at, okay, who has opened my mail and who hasn't opened my mail. You can go deeper in seeing, okay, who opened my mail, what time did they open my mail, and even how many times they opened my mail. So this is kind of like business development, right? When you have a number of people that you reach out to, and then you focus on the people that have shown interest or have replied to you, right? And you kind of build out your offering, or you focus on that particular subset of people that have shown interest, and that's the way you get the best results. So similarly with Wizikey, what you can do is you can discover the journalists that have shown the most interest in your pitch, and you can kind of nurture those journalists going forward rather than having to follow up or reach out to again each and every journalist that you sent it out to. You can do to the people that seem relevant basis these data points that you can access, and kind of focus your resources and focus your energy in a much more efficient manner, right? So yeah, that is Wizikey, from your strategizing to your evaluation of your particular campaign and how it performs. Have circled back to the dashboard that we have, which is kind of like a one-stop place for all the information that you might want to have. So you have your analytics bit here. You have the live numbers on the Wizikey platform, so you can see the live number of journalists as of today on the platform, the media lists being the interests list that we discovered in the Discover Journalist section. This is just a snapshot of all the campaigns that you have, kind of like a shortcut. This is the newsfeed shortcut, and this is where you can track all the mentions that your brand has had in the last six odd months or something like that. So yeah, so that is Wizikey in a nutshell. And again, if you have any kind of questions as to how the platform performs, we'd be happy to take them, Anshan and Lai. And also, if you have any kind of questions about PR and how you should be doing at a certain level or a certain stage in your company's cycle, etc., etc., yeah, we'd be happy to kind of help you out with those questions as well. So I'll kind of open the floor. You can just simply drop your questions in the chat and we take them up from there.
Thanks, Dhruv. So there are 2-3 things very interesting about how some of the companies who have never done PR, they keep asking me, right? So one of them is right on the relationship building, right? So how do you ensure that you're building journalist relationship, right? So if you have never done PR, for example, I would encourage you, don't overcomplicate things, right? Public relations is very similar to how you do business development actually, right? If you are reaching out to, let's say, 100 people in business development, maybe 20%, 30% will respond to you for a kick-ass, if you send a kick-ass email, right? Then you respond to them and then you kind of demo your product, then you kind of tell them about you, etc., etc., right? I think rather than overcomplicating things, please treat PR just like business development, right? Now, if you notice, if a journalist has responded to your campaign, right, then please try and respond to them ASAP. Now, ASAP could be 1 hour, 2 hour, because remember, journalists are also fighting a deadline to catch, right? Most of the times, 90% of the times, journalists have a deadline to catch. They have to file their story within their systems. They have to file the story first with their bosses. It goes to editorial. Then the decision is made whether it's going to be online or offline. So they have a huge time rush to catch, right? And which is where if you're able to respond to journalists, let's say in 1 hour, 2 or 3 hours, right? A lot of times you may not have a response. I think even then it's fine if you just send an automated response kind of a thing that, hey, we have got your query, allow us a day or set your expectation, right? Allow us a couple of hours and we'll get back to you. I know this sounds very simple, and it is. It's just that we kind of take some of these things for granted. but you will never take it for granted when you're doing biz dev, right? That's why I'm saying when you're confused, just treat relationship building with journalists very similar to how you treat biz dev, right? The second thing which I regularly get asked actually is in terms of industry stories, right? How do I ensure that while I am reaching out to journalists, they should be able to remember me when they are doing a story, right? Now, what we have done as a Wizikey in the last, I would say, 6 months now onwards, right? We have done more than 200 campaigns in a month, so which would be around at least 1,000 plus campaigns, right? Now, with every campaign that we do, we have a media relations department, which in turn talks to media houses, talks to these journalists, educating them about Wizikey, educating them about how and why they're getting emails, and they are excited about listing themselves on Wizikey actually, right? The takeaway that here is for businesses is, let's say if you are part of a milk tech example, right? If you are doing milk tech, right? What you can do is probably every once in 2 weeks or every once in 3 weeks, just reach out to the journalist with a simple introductory email, right? Which is could be as simple as, hey, I am Anshul Sushil, part of this company. We have done this much. We have so many customers. We have this founder. Let us know if you will be happy. We'll be happy to answer some questions if you have, right? Believe me, it is very simple. Yes, and life is all about making simple things work actually, right? It's just this simple email will ensure that you're in the top of mind awareness as a journalist. And I'm telling you, I have seen full page articles coming out by simple introductory things like this, right? Believe me, journalists are 99% times struggling to find a connect in the industry, and they are extremely pained because they have to first find out who is the PR agency, then find out the person, then come to you, right? And they love Wizikey because they know that businesses are directly going to respond to them. And which is where, if you have been using Wizikey and if you intend to use Wizikey, try and encourage your team, yourself to do once in a week or once in 2 weeks, simple introductory campaign, right? And journalists will start sending you inbound queries, which you will see in your campaigns. But let's say if there's a journalist who has not gotten your campaign, but the spread has word, and the journalists want to talk to you about a certain story, then that will be available in your inbox section, right? So that's something which we have developed, and I think we are finding a huge traction for company of every stage just by doing that. They have been able to get mentioned in the industry stories and articles as well, right? So these are a couple of things which I have been answering for other businesses. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And if you're part of the session today, and if you are not able to ask any questions, you can please, Dhruv, can you please show the slides once more? You have my email ID and you have my, okay. So I think we missed that particular bit. But what we'll do is we will share with you our email IDs if you want to, if you want us to answer any question for you, right, then please let us know. Okay. So on that note, thank you so much for joining in, guys. It was a pleasure to talk to you today. And I look forward to some more exciting campaigns and stories from your side on Wizikey. Okay. So thank you so much. Have a great day there. Bye.